Good morning, everybody. We're excited to have you back. Thank you for joining us today for another day of training on ProLink products. Our first session today is going to be what's new for ProLinkHFA with Leonard Magliola. Before we get started, I just want to give a couple of updates and kind of do some housekeeping with everybody for today. First, I wanted again to remind everyone to check out the partners tab at the top. It does have a few of our partners listed. These are partners we work with to support our applications, all of our different products. So they're involved with us in many different capacities. If you have the chance to check out their videos and their content and bios with their involvement in affordable housing, that would be great. I also want to make sure I thank the panelists from yesterday's sessions. We had an 8823 compliance panel with George Lyford from the IRS, Josh Brown from E&A team was on that one, Catherine Marnell from New York State HCR, and then John Unertel, I think, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, from Wisconsin, from WIDA. So I appreciate that group participating in the panel. We then had another panel for the Homeowner Assistance Fund Lessons Learned with Ro Arrington and Denise Hutchinson joining for that one. So I really appreciate everybody's involvement in that. And you can go back and look at those sessions. They were recorded. They will be available to you. If you just go back to yesterday's list, you can go in and download those as well to watch them, as well as the presentation decks. If there were any presentation decks, they'll be available for you. Another housekeeping item that I want to bring up today before we get started is the coffee and bagel kind of meetup area, the conversation area that we have as part of our conference. So yesterday we gave out randomly $50 gift cards to the participants in those groups. So the rooms accommodate 6 people in each room. You join, you just chat and catch up with each other. It's a great way for you to interface with ProLink people, ask questions about the sessions that you might have just attended, meet up with your colleagues. So yesterday we had Mary Todd from Idaho win one of those gift cards, Jeff Swanson from Rhode Island Housing, and then Teresa White from West Virginia. So congratulations, you guys enjoy those Starbucks gift cards, and $50 gets you pretty far at Starbucks. So I hope you enjoy that for a while. And this is just a quick picture of what that meetup looks like. So yesterday, we took a couple snapshots of a few of the different social hours. These occur on the 15-minute breaks between our sessions. So you can see there's 6 people attending each one, and it's kind of like a small virtual meeting kind of setting. But I really appreciate those who attended, and I think we had some good conversations, and I encourage you to do that again today. It's kind of one of those things where you have unexpected value out of those sessions. We had some new ProLink employees who got the chance to meet some clients that they haven't met in person, and some of those small little interactions that you just miss in virtual settings. So I hope you take advantage of that with this platform. And then I just want to remind, well, first, this slide it tells you how to get there. So if you go to community at the top menu and you click the discussions area, then you come to this page right here, and it will say the time slot of the break. And then you'll have the opportunity to click that join, that plus button to join a room, and you'll see how many people in the dark blue who are already in that room. If a room's already full, you'll be prompted to start your own room. You can see right next door to the one highlighted in red, there's an empty room. You would join that, and then others would continue to join that room as well. So we do have ProLink people generally in each one of those rooms, and we can help you if you have any questions along the way. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, and so now we're going to get into our ProLinkHFA What's New session with Leonard Magliola. Leonard is a senior product owner at ProLink, and so he's going to be walking us through for about a half an hour or so on the What's New functionality for ProLinkHFA. So with that, Leonard, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you.
Thank you, Bree. One moment while I share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see this. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Leonard Migliola, product owner here at ProLink Solutions. Today, we are going to talk about what's new with ProLinkHFA. I'm going to be going through some, but not all of the updates we've made to ProLinkHFA over the last year. If you are interested in seeing more information about some of the items I don't cover, or just seeing more detail about the items that I do cover, I encourage you to go to the help desk here. You can find a left-hand menu item called Release Notes, and under there, that did not take me to Release Notes, but Release Notes here, and under there you can find release notes for the last few years, so you can find more detail about everything that I'm going to talk about here today. I will be bouncing around a little bit today, just from topic to topic. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. First off, data views. One change we put in for the past year to data views is the ability to collapse folders in the data view menu here. There's a lot of data views in this menu, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit difficult to find the data view that you're looking for, or to focus in on the data views that you use on a regular basis. Nice thing about this feature here is you can collapse those folders. If you do step away from the screen and go to somewhere else, come back to the data view menu here, you will see that those folders are still collapsed. So you can keep open only the folders that you use on a regular basis. It's going to help you focus in on your work a little bit more and find things a little bit more easily. Another way to focus your attention on the data views that are important to you is the addition of the new favorites option here in the data views menu. That's the second link on the left-hand side here. And that new feature allows you to select certain data views to be favorites that you can quickly jump to just by popping into this screen, and really focus your attention on those data views that you use the most frequently. Not only are you assigning a particular data view as a favorite, but you're also assigning a particular view within the data view as well. And so if I click into the portfolio properties here, it takes me to that all properties view, because that's the one for this particular job that I do on a regular basis that I want to get to quickly. So that makes it really easy to get back there and see what I need to see. To add a data view as a favorite, just go to your data view. You can select which view you'd like to be favorited. And so if I select by activity here, for example, if I want that to be my favorite, to set that as a favorite, you just click Set as Favorite here. And that'll add it to the list of favorites on that favorite screen. If I jump back to default real quick, you'll see that that one is not a favorite right now because I didn't favorite the default view. I favorited the by activity view. If I come back up here to our favorite screen, we can see that my transactions data view with the by activity view is now in my favorites, and I can jump back there as often as I'd like to. Okay, number 2 on the list here, let's take a look at a portfolio property. We're going to talk a little bit about checklists. For checklists, the addition over the past year was the ability to keep our checklist item headers fixed. Previously, if you were on a checklist looking at checklist items and it was a long list of checklist items, and you scrolled, the headers on this particular table here would scroll off the screen along with everything else, and then you'd have to rely on your memory to remember which one was received date, completed date, and waive date. Now, when you scroll in a checklist, the checklist items will scroll independently of those headers, making sure that those headers always appear on screen. You can always see which column is which, and hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to enter the dates and the data that you need to enter while you're working on this screen. Moving on to entities. This change is not just for portfolio properties, but I'll demo it here out of portfolio properties. This is also going to be for any of the entity screens in our modules. So dev deal entities, TCA entities, agency activity entities, all of those similar screens where you can add entities to your deal or projects here. One addition is on the find entity modal. Previously, if you did a search for an entity and selected that entity to add as an entity to your deal, you would only have one option here, which is add selected and close. That would add that entity to the deal, close the window. And if you had a second entity you wanted to add, you'd have to open the window again, do another search, and add that entity separately. If you had a third and fourth, you'd have to keep repeating that process. We've now added the add selected button here. The add selected button allows you to add an entity to your deal without closing this window, and it'll take you right back to the same search results again after doing that. And you can select another entity and then go ahead and move on to add that entity as well, either using add selected or add selected and closed if you are done. And you'll see that both of those entities show up here after I've closed the window. So this one and this one here. And that's in all of the find entity modals. So you should be able to use that throughout the system. Okay, another addition here. If we come down to our compliance programs, we're going to take a look at additional set-asides. This is a change, not an addition this year. But on our additional set-asides, if I drill down to our additional set-aside details, we made a change this year to how we are calculating and entering both percent of units and count of units on the edit portfolio set-aside details screen. Previously, we would have you enter in a percentage, and then we would attempt to calculate out a count of units. This caused problems for people because 25% of 5 units is not a whole number, makes it difficult for compliance and a variety of other things. We flipped the logic around on that, so now you can enter in a number of units and we will calculate for you the percentage instead. So hopefully that keeps things a lot cleaner and a lot easier to understand as you're working through your additional set-asides. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at portfolio buildings here. And specifically, I'm going to go take a look at the tax form screen. And so another change this year was that we unified the 8609 grids on both portfolio property and TCA deals, so that, and I'm sorry, let me get here on TCA so we can see it, so that the columns that we show for 8609s are the same. Previously, we just had completely different sets of columns, both on portfolio property and on TCA deals. Now we've unified those two. You're seeing the same data for 8609s on both of these screens, regardless of which one that you're on. So hopefully that makes things a little bit more consistent for everyone as they're looking through everything. If you are adding a new 8609 into the system, let's go ahead and step through that real quick here. We have a new configuration setting that allows you to specify that you'd like the deal property name to show up in the address block of the 8609. This is an option. It's a configuration setting. You can turn it on and off yourself if you want it there. In this case, I have it turned on, and adding that new 8609 adds the deal property name as the first line of the address of the building here, and that can aid in matching up 8609s to properties based on the name, as opposed to having to remember or look up what the address is instead. If that config setting's turned off, then you will not get the deal property name in the address of building. And this is only inserted in there when you first create an 8609 as well. Okay, let's move on to utilities. Actually, let's not move on to utilities yet. Let's go back to our portfolio property. And I just wanted to show real quick as we talk about the next thing, portfolio property fees as a reminder for what we have for fees. On a portfolio property fee, we track information such as the year and the fee type, and then also the responsible party, or who the payer is of this particular fee. Previously in ProLinkHFA, if you created fees through the fee utility, we would not assign a responsible party to property fee. It was the responsibility of somebody to go through and make sure that you had a responsible party assigned to those fees after the fees were created. We've now created added some new features to the fee administration screen, which allows you to select a entity or a role that can be assigned as the responsible party when you generate a fee. So here we are looking at the fee administration screen for a developer fee. This is kind of like a template for a fee, and so it's a developer fee. The fee rate will be per LIHTC unit, and it's $1,000 per LIHTC unit. And the new field here is the responsible party role. And so we can select a role that we want to be assigned to these fees. And when we create those fees, if there is an entity in this particular role on the deal, then we will assign that entity as the responsible party for that fee. So just to demonstrate that, actually, let's save this real quick. Let's go to our fee utility. We can take a look at how that works. Let's see, I'll just search for multifamily. Search for our properties in the fee utility. We'll have to enter in some details about the year that we're creating the fee for. We're selecting the developer fee, which I just had assigned the general contractor as the responsible party role. Touch the periodicity. Enter a date in here. Select the properties that I want to assign fees to. In this case, I'm just going to do it for this one. We'll click create fees, and that's going to create one fee on the property that we selected. Let's jump back over there and take a look at what that looks like. Real quick, before I hop to that fee, let's just look at our entities and just see that we do have a general contractor on this property here, Better Builders. So theoretically, the fee will be created with Better Builders as the responsible party. If you do have more than one entity in this particular role for a deal, there is a set of rules in place to determine which entity is selected. And I believe the first determinant in that is the effective date of the entity, if the effective date is present. And you can take a look at the release notes. There may be some additional information there. Okay, so 1 second. Moving down, let's go take a look at the fees that I created. I always struggle finding that fee link. And then, so here's the developer fee for 2021. And we'll see that Better Builders is selected as the responsible party here. I'm sorry. All right, so that is the fee utility, and that is optional. So if you don't want to have an entity assigned as the responsible party on your fees, just don't select the responsible party role in the fee administration screen, and then that skips over all of that functionality for you. All right, jumping over to our agency activities. And this, it's actually activity funding I want to talk about today. And activity funding is available on our agency activities, supportive services, REO, single family, and then also in the dev, in the dev module, if you do have transactions and activity funding turned on over there, you will see activity funding under dev as well. So this is where you'll see some of this functionality under activity funding, which allows us to specify sources of funds for this particular project. A new addition this past year was the official support for adding the same funding source more than once to a particular project. Previously, you could do that, but it was a little bit unclear and a little bit vague when you were assigning transactions or allocating funds from these funding sources to transactions as to which one you were selecting. So we've enhanced support for the same funding source more than once, and you can distinguish between the different sources by entering in a funding description. So if you wanted to use that for different rounds of funding or for other purposes that you need to, you can now add those funding sources in there more than once. Okay. Let's start talking about compliance. Okay, so I'm going to start in, and one of the changes we made here is to add SRO as a number of bedrooms to units. So let's take a look at where you can find that. So on a unit here, in the number of bedroom fields that we have, there is now an SRO option. So previously we only had efficiencies. Now we have SROs, which are distinct from efficiencies in terms of how compliance works for these. If SRO is selected as the number of bedrooms for a unit, then for home program compliance, we will be calculating the max rent as 75% of the 0-bedroom fair market rent. Whereas for efficiencies, it's using the zero bedroom amounts, but for SRO, we're using 75% of the fair market rent. And for LIHTC programs, if you have SRO selected, then we do not apply the 6-month transient use rule to SROs for LIHTC as well. So that's the benefits of selecting SRO here. In addition to adding it as an option here on the edit unit screen, if we come take a look at our compliance programs, not additional set-asides, apologize. Let's come back to our home program here. And on the rent limits grid on edit compliance program for the home program, we now have SRO as an option on this rent limits grid. As I said, we're already defaulting the SRO max rent to a percentage of FMR here. And by entering a different percentage here, you can adjust what that percentage is. So instead of the standard 75%, you could set it to 100 or some other value as you need to for whatever your particular agency needs. But if you do leave this blank, it will default to the calculation that I've described already. Pop up, also related to SROs here. If I come into a building on portfolio property and we look at gross rent floor, we've also added the ability to enter a gross rent floor for SRO units on the gross rent floor tab on edit portfolio property or edit property building. Okay, let's see if I skipped anything else here. I did not. Okay, going to AM characteristics. On AM characteristics, there's a new option for HUD LITEC data collection. And there's a few different features or a couple of different features that we turn on if you have HUD LITEC data collection checked in the system. This was a user group item that we added. And when this is checked, one of the features that gets turned on is the ability to see fields on portfolio property that are used in the LITEC data collection HUD export that we generate. And so you'll see here, there are these orange bars that show up on the right sides of these fields here. If you see these orange bars, that means that these fields are used in that HUD export. And so as somebody's going through the system and looking at properties and preparing for HUD export, these are going to be important indicators to take a look at to make sure we've got all of the data points entered on portfolio property that we need for that HUD export. So keep an eye out on those. They are in a couple of different locations, and they do have slightly different treatment for checkboxes than they do for text fields and the like. But that's going to be helpful for anybody who's working with that export on a regular basis. Also, along with that option, and I guess let me just repeat again, if you unselect that HUD LITEC data collection checkbox on AM characteristics, you won't see these orange bars there. Also, for that checkbox there, we've added a new HUD export link on the left-hand menu in the selected property menu. And if you have HUD LITEC data collection selected on AM characteristics, then we can now click on this HUD export link on the left side. And what this is presenting to us is a preview of the data that would be shown in the HUD export for this property if the HUD export were to be run at the present time. And so this is a live look at data from across the system that would get loaded into that HUD export for this particular property. If you're looking at a particular value in here and you want to know where it's coming from, and you hover over these fields, it will tell you where these fields are coming from, either as in a field that it's specifying or as in a calculation that it's using to determine. So in this case, count of portfolio property units, number of bedrooms equal to 2 bedrooms. Or this one here is just telling us that that is the HFA number, for example. And so these will help you figure out what needs to be populated. If you're looking at the screen and something's not filled out, you can hover over that and you can easily see what you need to go fill in order to make sure that that gets populated properly. Lower down on the screen, if we take a look at the project file extended information section down here, this section contains editable fields, unlike the upper section. And the editable fields here allow you to fill in details for the HUD export that we don't collect otherwise in ProLinkHFA at this time. So there's nowhere else in the system under any of these other menu options where we are collecting this detail. But rather than continue to report missing as a value as we have in the past, we're giving you the option now to populate data points here on this HUD export screen. And then when you generate the HUD export file, we will populate all of these particular fields with the values selected on the screen in this extended information section. Similarly, the no longer monitored file, here's the fields that we would export for no longer monitored for this particular property, along with those tooltips. And then for the couple of fields that we don't collect otherwise in the system, we give you an option to fill those out here as well before generating that file. Okay, moving on here. All right, so next up is a new data view. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm actually not sure if this one is new. I apologize. This one may not be. Or maybe, let's see, it's my portfolio properties here. And so that's the compliance review program bins data view. I think this one is new. So what this data view is showing us is details off of the compliance review for a particular program for a bin. And in this case, you can see here the kinds of data that we have, including basic data about the property itself. The real specific data in this data view is details such as the applicable fraction status, unit fraction, square foot fraction, set aside status, calculated set aside, and the 45-day rule. Using 45-day rule is now available there. So if I click into this, I can take you over to the dev deal. That is not a dev deal at all. That took me to a portfolio property. Come over here to a dev deal. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be going to a dev deal. I'm thinking of a different data view that I'm showing today later on. So let's go back to portfolio property. Oh, we're on compliance reviews. We'll go to our LITEC tab. So here's our, I'm just messing myself up now. On our LITEC tab, we'll see here that same information from that data view, applicable fraction, unit fraction, square foot fraction, and all of those fields. So each one of the rows in this table here on Edit Compliance Review LITEC tab, these are all broken down by bin. And so you will see a row in the data view for each one of these rows on a compliance review across all compliance reviews, across all of the portfolio properties in the system in that particular data view. Okay, let's take a look at a unit here. We're going to talk about a new error message in the system. And I apologize, I'm not in the right property. Let's jump back to the correct property here. Go to our units. And so you can see on this unit here that we're looking at that this is a LITEC unit. It's low income. We have the LITEC program selected here. A new addition this year is that if you attempt to add a tenant event in for where you set the unit as a market unit, when everything else seems to indicate that this is a LITEC unit, the system is now going to give you an error about that and tell you that that's a problem because there is conflicting information in the system and it makes it difficult. Well, that didn't do what I thought it was going to do at all. Oh, I don't think I gave it time to check that. If I had done that, let's do that one more time. I gave that a moment it needed there to update that screen. So let's back up. Let's try that one more time. This time I'll wait just a moment there. So you can see how the LITEC's checked there, but I selected market here for those two things. So those conflict with one another. If I try to save that now, it's going to tell me tenant event cannot have a program type of market and be in the LITEC program. And so that's just to try to avoid contradictory information in the system that makes it difficult for us to properly do compliance on these units. Okay, back over to our compliance review real quick. Let's take a look at our LITEC tab again, and I should have mentioned this while I had this screen up before, but another addition on this LITEC tab over here is that this unit fractions, square foot fractions, minimum set asides here are all now showing 2 decimal places instead of what they were showing before, which I actually don't remember off the top of my head right now, but we're showing 2 decimal places now. Okay, moving on from there, let's take a look at the compliance exceptions down below. And the compliance exceptions are have been updated for the next available unit rule and the vacant unit rule. And we've done some big changes under the hood of the compliance engine that allow us to better track the relationship between the vacant units or the over income units and the units that triggered the exceptions related to those units. So in this case here, we can see that the change here is that we've added additional details. So the compliance exception shown here first is for the vacant unit rule. And that's triggered on unit 102, which is the vacant unit in this case. And so we'll see that exception on that vacant unit. But the addition here and the changes under the hood allow us to provide this additional detail, such as this exception was due to a market move-in on 5/5/2020, unit 102, with the bin information as well there. So this is providing a lot more detail. Hopefully that makes it a lot more easier to track why these events are happening, what the triggering events are, and what the affected vacant units are as well. And so in this case, both unit 102 and 104 triggered off of the market move-in on the same day from the same unit that had moved in. And so you'll see all that detail on both of those vacant units. Similarly, we made a change to the next available unit rule as well. Similar kind of under the hood changes that allow us to see which unit triggered this. And in this case, we have an over income unit that's 107. The compliance exception shows up on the vacant or over income unit. And we will see here that it's that same market move in 5/5/2020 for unit 102 that triggered the next available unit rule for this particular unit here. Okay, and then one other change, one other benefit is that some of those changes under the hood to those rules have also improved and enhanced our abilities on tracking next available unit rule and vacant unit rule across compliance periods as well. And so, so there's some additional benefits that came out of that entire restructuring that we put in place. A couple of items that I don't, or one item that I don't have anything necessarily to demo for, but I just wanted to mention here today is that there is a new config setting related to the compliance engine as well. And that is to determine how we define a comparable unit. Previously in the system, we defined a comparable unit based on the number of bedrooms or smaller. And that didn't necessarily work for everyone. And so we've now added a config setting into the system that allows you to set the compliance engine to compare based on square footage instead. So take a look for that config setting if you'd rather be using square footage for comparing comparables. Otherwise, you will continue to use the number of bedrooms. Okay, back over on our TC deal, which we're not on over here anymore, but we are. If we go to edit deal, we do now, I'm sorry, not edit deal. We come over to current stage. We now have address fields available over here for editing. And so that was something that was not present before, but that is information that's available in the system. So take a look at that if you're looking at editing some addresses there. And then the data view, on to the next one. The data view that I was thinking about earlier that I accidentally slipped into is the new dev deal income limits data view. So the dev deal income limits data view just lists out all of the dev deal income limits in the system. You can see the percent of units, percent of AMI here, count of units, and those kinds of details. This information comes from dev deals. If we click on edit dev deal here, get into this dev deal real quick. On the income limit information tab here, here are those dev deal income limit records. Each record in this table across all of the dev deals in the system will be represented by a single row in that dev deal income limits data view. Okay, next thing up is for work centers. So another change that we made this year was to allow you to select a work center category when creating a work center in the system. So previously, if you came here to create a work center from within ProLinkHFA, you would enter the name, owner, and a description. Now we query Procorum for the list of work center categories, and we allow you to select one. And when you create that work center, it will automatically assign that work center category to the work center on the Procorum side of things here. I can pull that up, although I don't know that that's going to be too interesting to look at here. But you can see the category is selected there. Okay, another change I don't necessarily have to demo, but I did want to mention on generating the HUD exports. The HUD exports now do some additional validation on the XML that we generate prior to providing the file to you. Previously, we would generate the XML using the data that you provided, and we would let you download it. The XML file format has some pretty strict rules that on how data should be formatted and other things like that. We couldn't always validate that all of those rules were being met, particularly around things like fields that need to be in particular formats, for example. We would just put your value in that you entered into the XML that we generate, regardless of whether it met the requirements, because that's the data that we have. Now we can actually validate those data points within the file, make sure they meet all of the additional rules for the XML, and generate errors and notices for you if there are any data problems, and then you can go and correct that data. This really probably more than anything just applies to data problems with the files, and previously we just accepted what you had and put it out there, but now we can at least give you an error message if it's not meeting the XML standard for the HUD export. Okay, I think that's it for today for HFA. So I do appreciate everybody's time here. And as I said before, if you do have any questions or you want to see more information, particularly around changes to some of the other products, such as Budget Pro and Tenant Portal, there were a couple of minor changes to those as well. So I encourage you to take a look at the release notes, and please let us know if you have any questions. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at ProLink Live today. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Leonard. Just a couple housekeeping items since we have a few minutes before the end of this session. Please, I think you can see my screen now. If you have a chance, please do continue to fill out those surveys throughout the event. We really appreciate you doing that. And yesterday we had quite a few surveys come in. This really will help us improve our future events. And I think everyone, or a lot of people know, we, in addition to our annual user group conference, we started doing quarterly events last year. So we would do quarterly trainings, which are a little bit smaller, kind of straight to the point sessions for training on a quarterly basis. We're trying our best to time our sessions with the activities and kind of busy seasons of your year. And so we're doing our best to line that up. But these surveys really help inform us as to what trainings you're interested in, and how we can best support you with this effort. So please, I encourage you to fill those out. Give any ideas on training sessions that you'd like to see next time. That'll be really valuable to us and hopefully to you as we continue to host these sessions. And then last thing I want to mention, it also kind of goes along with the coffee and bagel, which is really what this slide is meant to direct you to next, since we're about to go on a break, is that you, as you're attending these sessions, when you click on the session you're joining, you scroll down, you will see the bios of the presenters involved in that session. And if there are materials associated with that session, you'll see a files area to download those materials. When you come back here after the sessions, if they're not pre-recorded, then the recordings will be available to you and you'll be able to access those for 90 days past this event. So keep a hold of your CVent credentials and you can come back in and get those if you would like to have them again and watch them again. So just a couple of things. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and open up our coffee and bagel hour a little bit early. We're about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. So again, if you go to community and then click discussions, you'll end up in that area where you can join a room and have a little bit of a coffee hour with your colleagues and with us. So we look forward to talking with you directly in that space. And I hope you all enjoy the sessions today. Please reach out to us and give us that survey feedback as things come up. All right. Have a great one. I'll see you in Coffee and Bagel.